Hi there everyone, and welcome to Fingers, Fums and Fits, and to part 1 of a 2-part series on how I painted the Skaven Clanrats, from Warhammer Age of Sigmar Spearhead. In part 1, I will be showing you how I painted them in the dirty grimy style to match the rest of my Spearhead force. Can I keep the paint inside the lines? Let's find out. And to begin with, so they could be as dark and dingy as possible, I undercoated them with Chaos Black Spray. For the remainder of this video, I will be focusing mostly on the Claw Leader. And I started proper by roughly stippling Iron Warriors onto any metallic areas. Followed by a lighter stippling of Lead Belcher to the same areas. I then thinned down some Mournfang Brown until it was the consistency of colored water, and dabbed that over the metallic areas to give a somewhat rusty look. And then dry brushed these areas with Riser Rust. Now, I realize I went a bit overboard with this step, which I do fix later in the video, but you only really need a light dusting of this paint, or you can skip it altogether. Remember kids, often, less is more. Finally, these areas gotta wash with some thinned down rattling grime, to really make them look dirty. Now let's move on from the metallics and address the skin. Starting with a base layer of Nagaroth Night, over which I layered Rakarth flesh onto the raised areas. You want to avoid the recesses as best as you can here. I also painted their tails with Pink Horror, just to add a splash of color, before giving the skin a wash of Carroburg Crimson. And then returning to Rakarth flesh for a dry brush. Okay, that looks good to me. Now to move on to those nasty rags they're wearing. Let's start there with a coat of Mechanica Standard Grey. I then roughly applied white scar onto these gray areas, kinda half stippling, half dry brushing. You kinda want to make it look as rough as possible, but be careful not to get any onto any areas you've already painted. Now, here is where things get a little more interesting. You'll want to mix equal parts Lamian Medium, Skeleton Horde, and Rattling Grime until you have a nasty looking shade, and apply it over the rags. And then lightly dry brush this horrible mess with Ogryn Camo. And by that I mean the rags, not the whole model. All of the wooden elements were then given a coat of Grey Seer, followed by a wash of Garrigak Sewer. Now, I absolutely love this paint for wooden elements, and sure, you could dry brush or highlight with a lighter brown, but I think it looks great the way it is. Now, if like me, you went a bit too hard on the rust step, here's how you can tidy that up. Firstly, you'll want to stipple Lead Belcher over the metallic parts. Then, over any ridges on the blades, you'll want to run a line of Lead Belcher too. And finally, apply an edge highlight of Stormhost Silver. Speaking of metallics, whilst we're here, any supplemental metallic elements were painted with Screaming Bell. This included any medallions, the shield grips, and any banner pole details. These brassy areas were then washed with Reikland Flesh Shade, before getting an edge highlight of Runelord Brass. This was also applied as an edge highlight to the rusted armor. As we move on to the final elements to be painted, the leather details. Mournfang Brown was applied to any straps, belts, and wraps, as well as other leather elements such as this musician's instrument detail. These areas were then washed with a Grax Earthshade, and highlighted with Baneblade Brown. And following the addition of a muddy base, I think we can call these guys done. And don't they look disgusting? Now, I have to admit, I didn't enjoy painting these as much as I'd hoped, primarily I think because of the length of time it took. I painted these over the course of 3 days, and I found this quite frustrating. However, I am happy with how they turned out. However, it's not what I think. What do you guys think? Did I manage to keep the paint inside the lines? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again for the next one, where I'll be showing you how to paint some clan rats in a more traditional scheme, and hopefully a bit quicker too. So please do join me for that one. However, for now, have a great day everyone, and I'll see you later.